Thank you all for coming tonight for Creative FriYAYs, our new art talks that we're doing in collaboration with the North Fork Creative Coalition for their final Friday Frolics. These will also be posted live on our Facebook, I guess. These will also be posted on Facebook later in the month for you to watch. The last one was really incredible, and it was on grief through art. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that, I would definitely check it out. We have some really exciting things coming up at the Paradise. For August, we've got some live music. We are open for movies with a maximum capacity of 25 people, and we are working really hard to make sure that social distancing is social distancing is in mind, masks are required, and we're working really hard to make sure that we have a safe place. So we hope that you come out and continue to support the Paradise Theater. So tonight I'm going to be talking about new beginnings. I feel like I'm pretty familiar with new beginnings. I've went through a lot of them throughout my life. Started my first business when I was 22 as a wedding coordinator, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And same with, having kids, starting over. So I'm going to kind of talk about that tonight. And I hope you enjoy my talk. Thank you. And then I got back up, new beginnings. The summer of 1995, my husband brought me to the western slope of Colorado to meet his grandparents, aunts, and cousins. I fell in love, and I asked him, "How do we move here?" He replied, "We bring our own income." From that moment, I believe all of our new beginnings led us home to the North Fork Valley. I'm going to start out with a short story I wrote about 8 years ago that was published in the Colorado Mesa Literary Review. To me, the move I reference was the pivotal point in our lives, the one that set us on the path to getting us where we belong. And then I fell. My feet just slipped out from under me. Big houses are drafty and expensive to heat, so to keep our extremities warm, we had to cover them. Socks and plush carpeted surfaces created a danger I hadn't anticipated. I heard somewhere that it was best to just go with the fall, not reach out to grab onto anything because a person could break an arm or a leg that way. Instead, my tailbone slammed onto each stair, hammering home the choices that led us to this house. I landed in a heap on the tile floor below, my robe twisted up around my waist. I lay there for a few minutes, resting my head on the bottom step, crying quiet so I wouldn't worry my husband and kids. The funny thing about crying is once you start, you seem to find lots of reasons to keep on crying. Number one on my list was convincing my husband that we had outgrown our three-bedroom home in Green Mountain, where I didn't have to worry about going down the stairs to turn up the heat in the morning. In the new house, the boys slept in their very own beds, in their very own rooms, and they chose their very own bedtime story when I tucked them in. No more listening to baby stories for Christopher. He chose a chapter of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Zach liked the history of the magic treehouse, and Tristan never got tired of Wheels on the Bus. I hid in the bedtime stories, forgetting what separate bedrooms for the boys were going to cost my husband and me. In the new house, I had my very own room far from the playful bedrooms. I put fragile knickknacks in the living room high enough so the boys couldn't break them. I lit candles without fear of one of the boys getting burned. I turned up the music just loud enough to escape the noise of 3 young children. I was surrounded by candlelight and pretty things. But what would these moments cost us? In the new house, my husband had a 2-car garage. He had room to build that 1970 Chevelle. It wouldn't be the one he had to sell when he was 19, but it would be close. This one would be red, his favorite color, not blue. He'd get an air compressor with air tools to make the job easier, and he'd have it running in no time. Time wasn't the problem. When my husband found me crumpled on the floor, he scooped me up and drove me to the hospital. I cried on the way, not only because every bump set shooting pain straight up my spine, where it then spread to every nerve ending in my butt and lower back, but also because when the lender slid the closing papers across the oak desk and said, "Your payment is going to be a bit higher than I quoted you," I knew we were making a mistake. I cried when they said I would have to lie on my back on the cold, flat x-ray table and press my tailbone down so they could get a picture, and I remembered my husband saying, "Well, we'll just have to skimp on the groceries." I cried when they said it wasn't broken, only bruised, and remembered how Zach said on our first night in the big house, "Mommy, I want to go home." Did you know your tailbone is used in every single move you make? And once it is injured, it doesn't ever heal completely? Not completely. So it was a short fiction piece that I wrote, but it wasn't really fiction. Heal is such an interesting word. Every time I read this story, I cry. So no, I suppose nothing ever quite heals completely. We lost the house. The bank took it in 2007. We were one of those product of the housing market at that time. We filed bankruptcy in 2008, something I was deeply ashamed about. Divorce seemed imminent. In June of 2010, our family started over in Hotchkiss. We uprooted our lives and left our friends and family to see what new beginnings we could create over here. My husband's job brought us to Hotchkiss, one he would not have gotten if we hadn't moved to the big house we couldn't afford. Both Steve and I were born on the Front Range, and we grew up there. We had big family gatherings, and our parents were super involved in all our boys' lives. After the death of a very close high school friend of mine in February 2009, we created a close-knit group of friends we dubbed the Wakas. It was an acronym for all of our names. We spent almost every weekend with them. We celebrated birthdays, and first Fridays in the drunk tub were born. Despite our financial problems, we had built our lives on the Front Range, and yet we still struggled to truly find happiness. In 2008, 2009, and most of 2010, my husband and I lived apart. He would drive to Glenwood Springs on Monday mornings and then come home on Thursday nights. I was a single mom of 3 young boys during the hardest part of the week, with homework, school activities, and Cub Scouts. After 2 years of this, we felt the need to reunite our family and start over, where Steve could be closer to work and be home each night to attend sporting events, award ceremonies, and other important activities in our children's lives. I had started writing again, something I hadn't done in over 10 years. My inspiration was the financial struggles we had, the devastation of losing a business, being entrenched in depression because of it all, and the toll that it took on my family. In all honesty, I don't believe you can really start over. You just have to keep going and wading through whatever challenges life gives you. We were technically the same people. I'm the same person I was when I started my own wedding coordination business at 22, knowing nothing about planning weddings, but I jumped in anyways. I learned everything I could about etiquette, invitations, and crudités. I had no idea what that meant at the time. Steve was the same quiet, affectionate, and inappropriately funny man who won me over when I was only 18. The difference was we had a lifetime of new skills, coping mechanisms, and the determination not to end up where we had just been. My life on the Western Slope has evolved and changed, with new beginnings happening even here. I graduated college, finished the novel I started in 2007, and I fell in love with the arts community in Paonia. I finally found a place where I just fit, here at the Paradise Theater. A most wonderful place where my hard work, my dedication, passion, and loyalty are rewarded every time somebody walks through the door, every time we have a sold-out show, every time we make someone just feel with music, films, and theater. Our entire world right now is in the midst of creating change, adjusting to a new life. Will we embrace it or crumble under the weight? New beginnings are truly about perseverance, the ability to push through and find challenges, find solutions to life's challenges. I am a firm believer in growth through change. Heraclitus, the philosopher, said, "The only constant is change." We can fight a losing battle against change, or we can choose to embrace it and grow into who we are truly meant to be. Thank you all for coming.